What up, fam? We're now live on Instagram and YouTube and on Facebook. Like and share this feed. Waiting for Natalie to come on Instagram. All right, says Boss Up Talk Wednesday, and we got a good topic for you guys today, guys. So like and share this feed on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, wherever you're watching at. We got a super dope topic going for you today. What's up, Natalie? She's coming on live with me. This is episode number 68. We're live on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Waiting for my girl to come on board. There you go, Natalie. All right, guys, like and share this feed going live with Natalie Lee Martin. We're live on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Yes. All right. So Natalie and I have been doing this live for about a year and a half now, I think. Almost a year and a half, going live consistently and faithfully. And we've been talking about just ways to boss up in your life, ways to boss up in your communities, family life, personal life, single life, adult life, whatever it is that you're looking to grow. This is conversations definitely about personal development, spiritual development, growth in every aspect of your life, right? So today we're talking about making room for more. Listen, that is the story of me and Natalie's life, always making room for more, trying to fit things in, new projects, things that are exciting, things that you want to pivot from. But making room for more is so important in this season because, as Natalie and I were talking about earlier, I'm going back into the classroom. Natalie's getting her family back to the classroom, back into routines for business and family life. So when you're going through that process in this new month, it's like, how do you make room for more? So Natalie, first off, how was your week this week? I know we had some really good discussion last week. And just want to see, like, how is your growth level from this last week to this week, Natalie?
Oh, it's been an amazing week. It's been very, I don't want to say trying. It's stretching me. I'll say that. I am very much being stretched in my capacity, and I'm not breaking, which is wonderful. The kids had several doctor's appointments. I woke up on Monday morning and I had accidentally have like three things in 2 or 3 slots. So I had to quickly, like 5 a.m., I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 3 things in this position. So I had to quickly maneuver. But because I had already decided it's going to be God, family, and then business, I could eliminate based on that, criteria. So
Mm-hmm.
the mastermind had to get canceled. Then I had to pivot and move one of my client slots from Tuesday to Thursday. And then I was able to reschedule an appointment, and my kids were able to go to the doctor. Like, I didn't shift around the kids' schedule going to the doctor because I had all these things that had messed up my schedule. But last year, it would have caused me so much anxiety because I would have been like, oh, everything is important. I have to do all 3 of these things. Which one am I going to cancel? It's like, no, boo-boo, you already know the priority. You do what you need to do and move on. And it was a simple process as opposed to last year being so complicated for no daggone reason. And I still was able to get things done. That was one. The second thing, and then I'll be quiet, is God shifted my mind. I was saying for a while now that I'm not leaving this decade without my millions. And he shifted, and I'm not leaving my decade without my millionaires. So the goal now is not just the money, but it's the people, creating wealthy people. Like, I've just been really praying for my clients to have wealth and to have it more abundantly. And one of my clients said that she gained 6 new clients into her program. So this is the kind of mindset that I am shifting to. It's not just about me acquiring wealth, but everybody that's connected to me is also acquiring that wealth.
I think that's so good what you said about everybody's connected to you, because what happens is when you talk about connection, it's so important to really monitor who's in your circle, because once you start to make the vision about others, everything starts to fall in line. And I realized that just like at a young age, I did an activity with one of my friends. It was a really dope activity. So basically, we kind of broke down certain categories and certain things that we kind of really needed to revisit as individuals, and we did this activity together. It was really dope. And one of the categories that we had spoke about was about family. And I look at what I learned from my mom, and my mom has been one of the greatest examples of a giver that I've ever met. To family, to church, to life. That she's always giving. She's a librarian, and everybody knows who my mom is. My mom is always giving stuff away. But I realized is, for a long time, like my mom's salary didn't, reflect that, taking care of myself, my sister, and sometimes, some family members that would stay with us sometime. And I'm like, man, like, how do you always give your last? But I realized that every time she gave her last, she was always giving the first of something else, right? So the thing about it is when you learn to make room for more, by being a blessing to others, as well as really going into really areas like you're doing and really taking other people with you, God always meets the need, and I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is whenever I have a need, I sow a seed automatically because I don't want to confuse my seed for my harvest. And a lot of times we do that. We'll try to hold on to things, like we'll hoard on to things opposed to letting what was meant to go so we can make room for the bigger. I was watching this sermon from this pastor, I always forget his name, on Instagram yesterday or today, and he was giving an example of a refrigerator that was overpacked, and he said so oftentimes we try to stuff stuff in there, but if we don't actually get rid of stuff that's not good anymore, we'll mix the old with the new. A lot of times in kitchens, we have a term called first in, first out, also known as FIFO. So a first in, first out is whatever comes in first, you use it first. Whatever comes in last, you use it last. And it allows you to shift stuff around and see what you have. When it comes to my mentees, especially at school, first in, first out don't be happening. And the next, we found out that we had other good quality stuff that could have been used first starts to spoil and go bad because we never shifted things around to put the first in things first and the first thing and the last things out last. And what I learned is that once you start to really take inventory of your life, you start to see things start to grow. And the biggest thing that I always do, almost daily if I could, is to take inventory. What are those areas of your life that you need to rearrange or organize? The definition of make room is to rearrange or organize existing people, objects, furniture, belongings to create space for new objects. Sometimes it may be just like your apartment. If you start moving things in your apartment, you start to realize, oh, I really did have room for this. I just had to move certain things out the way and rearrange certain things. And even to going into a new school year, I'm just rearranging things in my personal life as well as my school life to say, okay, Jay, what are you going to do differently this year? Because this is your 10th year teaching. Like, how do you want it to look? What things do you want to keep? What things you want to get rid of? Because I always want to improve my practices as a teacher, as a mentor, because going forward, the more I make room for more, that means I have to get rid of a lot of stuff that's taking up space.
I love that. So I'm telling you right now, I'm stealing that FIFO from y'all chefs. I'm stealing it and I'm using it in my business because let me tell you how I work with so many visionaries, so many, people with big vision and ideas. We talked about this last week. That new idea that comes in, it comes in and it becomes a distraction to the existing idea that you're trying to work through. And so that FIFO, first in, first out, that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using that. Thank you very much. I'm like, that's the first idea that you have started working towards. Let's get this idea out first, implement it and execute it first before we start putting in a new idea and trying to implement and execute this idea. So first in, first out is phenomenal. And I love that it's a simple little acronym that people can remember because like I said, working with visionaries, I love them. I love working with them, but it's like your creativity can be a blessing and a curse because you have your mind is like a playground. There is so much going in. For many of us, it's like we don't sleep. People don't realize when you are a visionary, you never sleep. And you could be a visionary that's dormant and latent. Let me tell you, so you can have so many different ideas and never execute on any of them because as a visionary, you are constantly in your head. I remember when I was younger, I used to make up like TV shows and stuff just to keep me occupied. I was, alone a lot of the times. And so to keep me occupied, my imagination was on 10. So I would never be bored. I love being by myself, by the way. I'm never bored.
That's a whole blessing.
But that's a crutch too, because as a visionary, they tend to stay in their minds. So when we talk about making room, you can only make room when you begin to execute on the vision that you have. You're not going to make room if you consistently just have ideas and they're like, oh my God, it's wonderful. I had a friend that we used to talk all the time about ideas, and then she used to get so mad because she was like, I had that idea 3 years ago, and then somebody went in and implemented it. I had this new idea and somebody implemented it. And she would get frustrated with herself because it's like every couple of years she'll see somebody implementing her idea. But if you don't execute, people think that ideas are connected to who they are. They don't realize that ideas are connected to the time that we live in.
That's good.
The car was supposed to be manufactured at a particular time. The airplane came at a particular time. As technology evolves, our imagination also evolves, because now we have the technology to implement certain things in our imagination. And if you don't take a step forward, somebody else will. So this making room part, a lot of it has to do with the execution of a thing. Many people, we think making room is something that we fantasize about or romanticize, but it's actually taking the very next step to execute on the vision. That's how you make room for more.
Yeah, that's really good. It's so funny that the book that I was just like organizing, and this is the book I have in front of me. First Things First by Stephen Covey. One of my mentors did I first heard about this book from my mentor. I can't think his name right now. You call him Rev, but he was my mentor since I was like 14. Rev McDonald. So Rev Vincent McDonald, Jersey Public Schools, created a program for us called 15 Together. Always took a liking towards him because I always had this different style of thinking. And he told me about this workshop he did based off of this book, First Things First. And I started to read, it was a really good read because it talks about how we live life versus the time clock versus the compass. And there are certain things that we miss taking inventory of because we're always on the time clock. Once you start to develop the GPS mindset, the time clock versus time clock, and like you want to navigate a path, you start to see things differently. When you're always trying to like thinking about a job. Some people hate when they get their work schedule. Like, oh man, it's 12 o'clock. I got 5 more hours to go. It's 1 o'clock. I got 4 more hours to go. When you start to develop that lifestyle of living, it transpires in other things, because now on the weekend, it's like, oh boy, I only got 3 days to enjoy my life. I only got 2 days left. So once you start to develop that mindset, you start focusing on the time that you don't have to do what you want to do versus, hey, you know what? Let me first be grateful that I have an opportunity to make research at a job. And then once I start to develop that thankfulness, now things that were once a hindrance start to really pop up to say, you know what? Because I displayed gratitude in one area of life, I'm now able to start to see what things can I fix up. You know what? I realized that, I know that I might not like the job that I'm in, but I'm thankful for the resources. So as I start to be thankful, ideas start to come, because once you get the focus off of what's not working right and how much you hate a situation, you start with gratitude, you start to welcome in new ideas, right? Whenever I was trapped in certain jobs that I hated or certain situations, as soon as I changed my mind and found the good in the job, ideas started to pop up because I now got rid of the negative thinking and I started to bring a good energy in, that where stuff that I would be stuck on, the answers would just come, because I started to develop a healthier, happy lifestyle by just reading more, seeing things more. The time and energy I would do towards dreading a situation in life, I spent that same energy being grateful and showing gratitude. And it's something about an attitude of gratitude that make people want to be around you. Like, goodness just starts to come when you're grateful, because I realized anytime I start to be grateful, everything starts to shift and it becomes easier to make room for new things in your life. So like, and sometimes too, when you're negative, people don't want to be around you like that. So sometimes when you're too positive, people don't be around you like that either. But that's another story for another different day. But I realized that as I start to talk to like people like Natalie, right? I start to develop an attitude of gratitude, thankful for clarity, thankful for everything like that. And the more I develop this sense of gratitude, it seems like everything starts to shift. Like even to like last week I spoke to you how I did that PD for teachers. I'm focused on coaching, and next something just drops into my lap that coaches in a different way that I didn't think about. I didn't think I would be coaching other educators in culinary arts and CTE. That wasn't what I was thinking about. But once at the beginning of the summer, I had a certain amount of money. I told you supposed to come. Didn't come, but you know what? For the most of the month of July, I was just really the first 2 weeks out of school, I was so annoyed about how I didn't get that I started to really take away from the things that I did have, right? So once I changed my mindset around like July 13th, my whole summer changed for the better, where opportunities started to come, which made me be more grateful that I realized that, Jay, check into your freezer, see what you have. Check into your house, see what you have to as what to sell. Because the thing about it is, once you start to realize everything that's working for you, you start to minimize the things that are not working for you, and the things that are working for you will start to be so productive with your attitude of gratitude that things shift. The biggest thing I learned about that, about having an attitude of gratitude, that it starts to help me make room for more positive things. If I focus on the negative thinking all the time, how I don't have enough, and a lot of times I don't, like when you're an entrepreneur, you may see me making a lot of good deals, but then you realize that by the time I got to pay everything out, it gets so expensive and taxing that I'm like taxing. I'm like, oh man, like, yeah, I made 10,000, but then I got to pay $8,000 in all these expenses, But I realized that once I adopt the attitude of gratitude, things just start to come in my life and start to manifest. Good people start to come in my life, opportunities come in my life, and even too, going back to starting to really have a positive faith confession. Like on my wall over there is a wall of big oak tab paper, just a faith confession, just of scriptures. Because once I look at that every morning, it starts to change my attitude and make me more grateful. That every morning, opposed to waking up like, oh, what I got to do today, I say, you know what, God, I thank you for waking me up this morning. I thank you for starting me in my day. Thank you for starting me with my right mind, because some people are waking up not in their right mind. It makes me think of like my grandmother, where, she had a mental illness and had dementia, and life was never the same for her. So I start to wake up with an attitude of saying thank you, that my mind is right. And once you start to be grateful, it's just that you start to make so much room for more things, because once God realizes that you're grateful, they're grateful for this, I just want to bless. It's like a child. Once your child is so grateful, you just want to give them everything, because the gratitude just says thank you, that you want to just bless them with more. So what areas in your life can you be more grateful for to experience a fullness of what God has? Because once you're not grateful, it's like, why do I want to bless you? You always ungrateful. You always not saying thank you. You always got your mouth turned up when I'm like, I'm trying to get the blessing to you, but until you start to be grateful, how can I give you more?
Man, I'm over here trying to type in the comments. Oh my gosh, that is so good. So Cass had dropped in the chat, I am grateful. And it's so crazy because we were in a clubhouse room. We co-moderated a clubhouse room today, and the clubhouse room was gratitude, the purpose of gratitude, or gratitude, like extending your purpose and working in your favor. And it was so good because she was talking about things that would normally look like detrimental, or normally look like a setback, and being grateful for those things. And here you come talking about gratitude is a way that God allows you to make room for more. It is, I'm just so blown away by how everything is being done strategically, because although you were not in the room, I didn't say start talking about gratitude. You started talking about gratitude, and just to show the alignment that we are in with what God is doing in this season, with entrepreneurs, with believers, with people who are trying to merge ministry and the marketplace. Like, we are so in alignment with what the Holy Spirit is doing in this season, that we are going to get everything that He promised us. And so to precede that, to prepare for that, and I am gifted, like you said, preparation precedes execution. And that is absolutely right. But you have to execute on smaller levels to prepare. We cannot prepare by keeping everything locked in our minds. We cannot prepare to receive something different by doing the same things. We have to make the shift somehow. We have to begin to do certain things. And one of the things you said that we can do right now to make room, which is really to increase your capacity for what the abundance and the wealth that is coming, is to be grateful for what you have. And then I am gifted, like you. Y'all blowing up the chat. Y'all are so phenomenal today. Said that you know, we are always talking about we're always talking about the money. Oh, this is what he said. Yeah, people don't really talk about having to minimize expenses. They're just talking about making more money.
Mm-hmm.
And minimizing those expenses is part of managing what you have and being grateful for what you have. Just being grateful for what you have. So it is just mind blowing to see what is happening throughout the marketplace and how many of us are on this trajectory to obtain and store the millions and the blessings that God has already prepared for us in the future. It is not something that is so far away. Like, you know, when you were young, you should just wish you had $1 million and just hope and pray maybe one day that could be me. When you look on the TV and you be like, that's good, but that will never be me. It's like we're now being positioned to achieve and receive all the things that we have been praying for, all the things that we have been preparing for and working for, all the things that we have shifted our mindset to receive. It's literally right here. So this is really good.
You know, it's funny that you say that part too. I'm gonna see if I have it right here. My mentor, who I love dearly, is this right here? I think it might be one of the folders. So my mentor, Dr. Stacia Pierce, she has these things right here. Something called goal cards. I love these because what happens is, talking about goals, right? We make certain things that we talk about, but we don't actually write it down on paper, right? But with stuff like goal cards, it reminds you of you speak these things that you want to do, like you want to be a millionaire, you want to do this, you want to do this, I want to have this, but we never increase our storehouse to receive it. You know, there's so many things that we say that we want, but we never increase our capacity to receive it. So, for example, if I say I want to be a millionaire, I don't even got an account that's right for a millionaire. Millionaires don't have regular bank accounts. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like we do all of these things, but then we don't research what are we going to do with the resources. Okay, once we get that lump sum, okay, are we going to invest it? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do get a trust? Like, we don't even research where we truly want to be. You know, I think that's the easiest part that we can do that we just choose not to do. Like, we want to have these big blessings, but we don't even know how to receive them properly. You know, like even to how to even get tax-free money. Like we want to get this stuff, but the next we lose all of it because we don't know how to manage taxes. We don't know how to do our books. You know, with things of that nature. I think the biggest thing to do is as you start to make room. Like perfect example, and I'll do a kitchen analogy again. So in my classroom, I have one, two, three. I have three big refrigerators. No, maybe 4 or 5 other. Oh, sorry, my thing was on mute. Sorry, that was me. So going back to just making room, right? So there's something called gold cards. I'll do it again. It's something called gold cards, right? That she uses, and we write these goals down, and we write down some achievable things on this card from Mr. Dr. Stacia Pierce. But when we make these goals, we don't actually think about how it's going to get done. We make a goal, we never make room for it. We never give ourselves an opportunity where to place it at, right? So going back to my classroom, like I gotta do order this week for next week because we already got food cooking and school didn't even start yet, right? So when I order food, before I order food, we clean the refrigerators and the kitchens out. We clean everything out. I have like 5 big refrigerators and I have one big deep freezer, right? So before I even start to receive food, I have to make room for the big orders because some weeks I get really big orders that maybe $1,500 to maybe $3,000 worth of food. So I have to prepare myself by going into the kitchen with my mentees. Okay, let's see what we're missing. Let's see, do we have enough onions? Okay, we're running out of onions. Let's get some more. Do we need to have enough chicken? Do we have enough chicken? No, we need to order 10. So I have a whole itemized list of stuff that we should have on hand all the time. And sometimes the reason why you're not winning in their victories is because you don't know what you have on hand. If you don't know what you have in your bags of tricks, in your bags of arsenal, how do you know how you're going to win a fight that you need? Sometimes you got to check, let me check my joy. How much joy I got left? Okay, so I need to re-up on my joy. Okay, listen, I'm not eating the best I need, but I know I need energy for this big day. Let me check and see what's my intake of veggies and fruits. Like you got to start taking inventory of your life to the point where if I know I'm good, like I know Natalie has a busy September because everybody's birthday in September, right? As well as getting kids back to school and stuff like that. For me, I have a very busy September because I have to learn 130 names of kids. I got to start planning for the school. I have to have so much stuff done. But if I don't take time this last 2 weeks of August to mentally prepare myself to be able to take it on, I'm going to be burnt out from the door. Think about a classroom. Classroom management is so important. So before I even meet these kids, I have to have some expectations in place from the jump, because once I get those expectations, the whole year will run smoothly. I deal with knives in classrooms and heat, where kids can really burn themselves, cut themselves, and you gotta. And my friend was talking the other day. He's like, "Yo, bro, I'm having trouble like using the instruments that you teach me how. How do you do this with 20 to 30 kids in the classroom, and you can't see everybody, which you can't. So I have to create expectations for my students that when they come into the classroom, they'll understand how it should flow. They'll understand how things should process, and they'll know everything. And I make room for them to be successful. So I teach them everything I could possibly think of. So as the school year goes down, I have increased their capacity to receive by making room. Like, you have to make room in your brain every single day to be able to handle certain things. If you don't take time to make room, how do you expect to handle the new stuff? So when it comes to that class, we get new orders in. You know what? We organize the day before. We go through, see what's going bad, because next, you know, guess what? I may have something that's about to go bad. Like, for example, is when herbs are about to go bad, I make herb oil, right? When fruit about to go bad, I'll make a sorbet. And guess what? I can use these items, because sometimes it's not about making room for new stuff. It's about taking your old stuff and rearranging them to the freezer. So then, you know what? I can use as a later date. So you know what? I learned how to repurpose items in my life. There are certain things that, you know what? These strawberries was gonna be to eat just regular, or to make a strawberry shortcake. But you know what? Let me freeze these, and let me make a little sorbet or something. Like, sometimes you gotta go through your arsenal and rearrange certain things in your life. The clarity that you got on that business that you thought was gonna be one way is not this way. A lot of people don't know this, but Dentine, I think it was Dentine or Winter Fresh. Winter Fresh was not a gum company. They sold soap, and what they did was they packaged the gum inside the soap package for free, because they said, you know what, we're not making as much money in the soap part, but we should start packing gum inside. Eventually, people will take on. So they gave out millions of sticks of gums for free, and what was once it was supposed to be a soap company, no one even knows they sold soap. If you don't know the history, you just know them for being one of the number one gum companies in the world. But they started by, let me take what we have now and to start inserting people so they can make room for us in the industry of the gum world. And now everybody knows who Winter Fresh is. You cannot deny Wrigley's gum. Wrigley's is such a prominent name in so many things because they started to make room. They started to pivot. So if you're not taking time in your life to make room for to make room for stuff that needs to be repurposed. There's certain gifts in your life that has more than one meaning. Me being a chef, I started out baking cakes. I don't even bake that much anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've had so many times to repurpose what my God-given talent is to be able to reach the masses, to make room for me to go in different spaces. If I would have just stayed, let's say I worked at the Hyatt when I was 16 years old to 21. If I would have stayed at the Hyatt waiting for them to give me the raise that I was supposed to get, the raise was, I think, from $12 to $15 I was asking for. Like, literally, this was in 2000 and I guess 2011. I'm like, hey, I want to just get a raise just so I can get back and forth to school and not have to struggle, because I need an extra $4 an hour to really get to where I need to go. If I would have stayed complacent, staying there, I think I probably would have just been at maybe touching like $30 an hour from 12 years ago. And it's not wrong if you make that now, no judgment that. But I'm saying is, if I would have stayed with that mindset of waiting for somebody to give me a raise that was pennies, I would have had a very different story now. I probably wouldn't have been doing this with Natalie. So what I realized is, once I started to make room for all of my gifts, like, hey, let me lay all my cards on the table. God, what do you have for all of these cards? And God will give you something small first. Hey, so I'm working on this right here. And you may think that it's something small, but if you don't get that small part right, it's not going to open up the doors for every one of your cards that you have. Be honest with God. Have all your cards laid out. Yo, I got a ace, I got a king, I got a one, I got a two, I got all of these things. This is what I have. Here's my hand. What can you do with it? And you got to get to a place where you are laying your cards out so God can add super to your natural and make room for whatever you need to be in your life.
That's good. I believe that you talk about this a lot. Well, I believe, I know you talk about this a lot because you talk about self-awareness and being self-aware. And that's part of what you're doing as you were describing how you start the school year. It's really taking inventory. And that's a phenomenal way to start if you're building your business, if you just came into entrepreneurship. But even as you enter into every new year or every new quarter, taking inventory of what you have, looking at where I am, what do I have at my arsenal? And that's way some entrepreneurs have been very successful at repurposing and repackaging what they have instead of creating something brand new. So just putting on, repurposing it and presenting it differently, because the market does change and the people that enter and exit the market is going to change as well. So having that, just having that mindset to always come back and do inventory, always be self-aware. And that comes with preparation. You don't just wake up one day and become self-aware. There's some inner work that has to be done. So you talked about, the stuff that you have to deal with the students, but on the coaching side, we definitely have to deal with these limiting beliefs. We have to deal with these blocks. We have to deal with this, mindset that people have that they are, want, to run away. Let me just use one example. I'm not going to work for nobody. I'm getting out of this, 9 to 5. So nobody ain't going to tell me what to do. But then you get into the marketplace and your audience is telling you, or your clientele is telling you what they want or they don't want. We have to really shift our mindset, and we have to really do the work in the beginning to be self-aware, because if you don't have the right mindset and you come from corporate and you jump into entrepreneurship, you're going to quickly want to go back, because it's a different beast over here. It's like you're fighting with either a bear or a lion. Which one would you want to pick? You know what I mean? They both ferocious. Let's be honest with you. But based on your history, based on where you've come from, it might be like, you know what, let me tackle this bear or let me tackle this lion. But they're both ferocious, and we have to understand that and really take inventory, become self-aware. And then we can start making room. Because when you become self-aware, like when I first came into the market, forget first coming into the market. Let's go to last week. Last week when I really sat down and I said, yo, Natalie, you're not talking to your target audience. You're not talking. They can't hear you. You're not speaking their language. And I had to go back and take inventory of all the clients that I have helped over the years, the last 2 years. I'm saying over the years like it was forever and a day, but over the last 2 years. And I went back and I was listening to all of their words, and I'm reading the testimonials, and it's coming across. They believe they have a big vision and they need clarity on executing that big vision. Not just because they want to make big money, but they want to feel fulfilled and they want to have a big impact. And big impact will lead to making big dollars. And so I had to go back and look at all the stuff that I did, listen to my clients. And what I've done so far has gotten me where I'm at right now. But if I want to accelerate the process, if I want to speak to more people, if I want my message to travel further and faster, I have to constantly keep going back to that inventory part to say, hey, Natalie, what's the problem here? Why haven't you reached 50 new clients this month as opposed to only 5? Why haven't you got 50 or 100 new sessions as opposed to having only 5 or 10? You gotta go back and take inventory, because what I have learned, the only problem is me, but I am the solution. So that allows me to say, okay, where am I not making room for the abundance that I know is already mine? How do I shift this thing? Do I need to go take more classes? Do I need to take care of myself? Am I showing up raggedy in the marketplace because I'm not sleeping and I'm tired as all get out? Am I not prioritizing the right things at the right time? Am I not speaking what I should be seeing, or am I speaking what I already see? I don't see nobody coming. I don't see this thing working out. Is that what I'm speaking? Or am I shifting my language? Even By changing your language, you're making room. By saying one little shift that I did, Josh, I stopped calling myself an entrepreneur and I started calling myself a successful entrepreneur. That one little shift that I made in my language made room for more clients and for more four-figure months. Before then, it was like struggling and all of this stuff. I don't know where the money gonna come from. Nobody listening to me. And I had to make a shift in my language. It wasn't the marketplace, it was within me. But I had to be self-aware and make room for what was next.
That's so good on so many levels. So I looked up the definition of shifting because we like to have, as educators, we like to have the appropriate meaning of stuff. But this is shifting. Shifting is a cognitive ability, right? Shifting plays an important role in learning and problem solving. It allows you to choose a strategy and carry it out to adapt to the challenging situation in which you find. Shifting is the best way to adapt to a situation. Not saying that you can't. A lot of situations come, right, where it seems like you can't make it. You can't. Like, I'll give you an example. So my dad, and I talked to my friend about this. My dad struggled with drugs for a very long time. He passed away in 2014, but that struggle was so hard for him, you know. And he did try to shift. He moved to a different city, but kind of had some things happen. And I just think about that. A lot of people look at that as like, oh well, certain things were a choice for him, right? But let's take it personal, our own personal life, because sometimes we look at certain situations like, oh, well, why would you do that anyway? We know the effects of drugs and alcohol. But let's talk about stuff that is in our lane, about overeating or about being on Instagram too much. Like, all these things are different challenges that we have. We look at, sometimes we, especially in church world, we see certain things as greater than the other. When it's just like, when you start to go down your own lane and your own road, you'll start to see we all have challenges that are vices towards us that we all have to shift from and we have to pivot from. Even to when it comes to just like me being a better teacher. I don't like doing paperwork. I hate doing paperwork. That is like probably one of my annoying pet peeves about teaching. And I finally met a principal who helps me shift. And like, yo, Jay, okay, he keeps me on task. Like, Chef, okay, he gives me a list. All right, Chef, this is what's due this month. Okay. So and he gives me a reminder. Okay, this is a reminder for this one. He helped me shift to really just be more task oriented when it comes to paperwork. So whatever you're struggling with, you have to find a way to shift, because once you start to shift, you create a strategy. Shifting is literally developing a strategy. And a lot of times we don't ever create a strategy. When it comes to like reading, like a lot of kids do not like to read when it comes to like textbook stuff. So I rarely give out textbook work, but I show them how to do something called skimming. Like, find the meat, get ready to like the fluff. Let's get to the meat of everything. So I show them how to skim read. So this way, when they're doing certain projects, they understand the overall concept of something. And once they understand that part and we discuss it, now they want to go back and really learn more about it. And there's certain things in our life that we have to learn how to really skim through certain situations, get to the part that we need to get to. Because once you start to see the part, once you strategize by shifting, you start to see the things that really matter the most. Once you start to shift, you start to see the it becomes so much harder to really adapt. But once you start to really make a conscious effort and a conscious decision to say, hey, you know what? This is challenging for me. I must admit that this situation is challenging. You have to acknowledge the problem first. Let me acknowledge the problem first, that, hey, you know what? Time management is a big issue for me. But you know what, though? I thank you that today will be my day to be better. So let me plan a strategy for this. So let me get out my Google Calendar. Let me get out my calendar on my iPhone, and let me be intentional about this. One thing I became and this is something really intentional I do. All my friends' birthday and people that I meet, as soon as I meet them or as soon as I find out their birthday, I put it in my calendar, because I want to be intentional about making people feel special on their birthday. That's something I always do. Now, I like to make people feel special in that way. So I save everybody's birthday. So if you cool with me, I send this audio to you that is just very much fun and just celebrate you. But that's what I chose to be intentional about. Once you start to shift and you start to be intentional, you want to find ways to make your day so special, but like you want to find ways to really become intentional. So when you start to shift your mindset, there are things you're going to be intentional about. For me, when I have catering clients, right? As soon as you send me your order on my website, I write it in my calendar. This is the day, this is the time, and there are 4 things I ask you for. I ask you for your photo, I ask you for your menu, I ask you for your color scheme, and I ask you what your music playlist is like. I ask those 4 things for a reason because I take notes of that stuff because I want to be intentional. And I also set an alarm for it 2 weeks in advance, a week in advance, and the day before because I want to make sure that with my clients, they know I'm checking in on them. I make them feel special. I remember what's important to them. I remember, like, I may ask for their wedding song because I want to make sure when I'm doing my events, when I'm doing my business, I make sure I'm so strategic about how I promote my stuff. When it comes to whatever you're working on, you have to get to a point where you shift to be excellent. You know, like you have to make a quick shift to develop excellence in your life. Those areas that you're not excelling in, why aren't they excellent? What are the things that you're missing out on? What are the things that you need to improve? When you start to improve your practice, what was once a hardship becomes an easy transition. Like for me, I know like one thing that was like paperwork with my business, I shifted that. I started to be more intentional on my calendar stuff. Okay, Jay, you got to do this by this day, this by that day. Okay, Jay, by the 15th of the month, you need to know what you're doing for the next month for productivity. I already know that it's meal prep season. It's people going back to school season. I know it's Labor Day, so guess what? I'm about to do it. No, Labor Day is I'm going to do a Labor Day sale because I know what's coming up. So today, by this day, I have to have my Labor Day sale out today so I can make money for this weekend. So you have to think about what works for you. What are the areas that you're struggling with that you have to make room for God to really work with you on? Like, what are those areas you got to really say, you know what, this ain't working for me. I have to be okay with first realizing that this ain't my jam. let me stop the music and let me actually write the lyrics to the life I want to see. Let me write the manuscript to the play I want. Like, let me write my life how I want to visualize it. And the more you start to write, the more it becomes natural to you. The more it's like you finally get to take your training wheels off the bike. And now you're riding without the stuff because it becomes muscle memory to you. Whatever you start to see a problem with, acknowledge the issue, come back to it, say, hey, you know what, I got to work on this. And then you put the practice in play because you shifted to adapt a new strategy.
That's good. That is so good. Look, self-awareness is the key. Being honest with who you are, being honest where you are, that's the key to making the room. You can't make room on something that you think you're already, operating in or doing, or you're not willing to acknowledge. And I think that is the best thing that I got from a coach, is just be honest with where you're at. The reason why a lot of us don't have the things that we have, we're not moving in the space that we want to move, is because we're not honest enough to say either I don't want it, or there's some blocks there, or there's fear that's stopping you from acknowledging or just showing up as your authentic self, because you desire certain things, but in order to get to that place, you got to be honest about where you are at. I can't make room for a house if I don't acknowledge the fact that I'm in an apartment. Like, you gotta acknowledge. It's basic when we look at it in the natural, and we make it so complicated when it's something like emotional, or when it's some mindset. I wouldn't even say spiritual, because we're not even talking on the spiritual side. We're just talking about mindset. Not just, but we're talking about mindset here. We make it so complicated, but if we take the complicated part out of it, it can be complex. It can have more than one step to it. But if we step back a little bit and look at it realistically, look at it from the outside point of view. You know how many of us, we could look at other people. We could coach our friends. We could coach our mama. We could coach our kids, but we can't coach ourselves. Like, step outside of yourself and look at it realistically and say, you know what? I've been speaking recklessly. Or, you know what? I really don't like reading. That's why I haven't taken the time to go ahead. They said this book is going to be the best book, and I'm like, I don't like it. So I'm just going to try to go to YouTube University and try to finagle my way through, and the answer is literally locked up in the book. Like, just be honest of where you are so that you can make room for the more. And one last thing I'll share from me, when God said, hey, I want to take you to the next level, the first thing I had to do was start working out. It didn't start with what I thought it was going to start with. It started with me getting healthier, running every day, doing those things. And once I started doing that, my body and my mind started working in tandem together to help me prepare for what was next.
But the good part about that too is I just think that we have so many big ideas, but we don't want to do the little things that make that big ideas work. You know, like what God is trying to get a lot of people to, and whoever you believe in. I'm just talking about because I don't mean that. That's what me and Natalie believe in. So if you don't, it's no judgment. But I know what God is really getting me to is just really, if you accomplish the small stuff and pass the small test, big things become easier. You know, we want these big things, but you know, like for example, is like making a cake. A cake is delicious, but if you don't understand like the little things, it makes it hard. Like if you don't understand that, yeah. So if you wanted the cake to be moist, you got to add fat to it. If you want the cake to bind together, you have to add eggs to it. You know, like when it comes to a recipe, you know, for me, I just have learned as being a chef why every ingredient makes sense. When it comes to your life, you got to realize, why do you have these ingredients? You know, like when you really take an inventory of your life, why am I good at music? Why am I good at writing? Why am I good at this? Because once you start to really identify every ingredient to the recipe God has given you, it starts to make sense. But here's the thing about a recipe, right? I love that you may have we may have the same 10 ingredients, Natalie and I, but we'll have two totally different results because we see things differently. Natalie may see things that, oh, you know what? I'm going to make a chicken stir fry with this. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to make chicken Alfredo with this. It's just like we're looking at things differently. So the thing about it is just that be comfortable with learning the little things, learning the giftings in different areas. Because once you start to really understand your gifting and understand your ingredients, the recipe becomes the recipe becomes so simpler. If I start to know why my ingredients work this, like why does baking soda and vinegar come together and it makes a reaction? You know, like you gotta start learning things in your life. Like, why do this cause reaction? Like, why does if I go to bed too late, I'm tired in the morning, I gotta go to work. Like, you have to understand this stuff because once you start to understand the why part, you don't keep doing the same thing if you want different results. So once you start to analyze what you do and why you do it and what you have and why you have it, life turns out very differently because I have now chosen to be intentional about what God has given me, be intentional about what I have to do, and be intentional about what I have in my arsenal. If you know what's in your shopping, but if you know what's in your basket, if you know what's inside your mindset, you start to move differently because now I've pinpointed every single ingredient, how it works, why it works this way, and how I'm going to mix my bag of ingredients to make the best thing that works for me. So you got to make room. Once you make room, you start to identify what works to come inside. And once you start to make room, everything becomes simpler. If you guys are looking for coaching as relates to clarity, hit my girl Natalie up. If you're looking for purpose, hit me up. We're here to help you out. Remember, closed mouths don't get fed. So if you need help, ask for help. The biggest lesson I've learned is, Jay, every time I try to do it myself, it's not that I didn't do it the best of my ability. I could have saved so much time by asking for help. And even if I get a no, I know that, you know what? I can still ask somebody else because I know that this person has experience in this area. Let me just ask for help because I may learn something new by doing something, by asking for help. I may get another resource because think about community. Community isn't just about you being the best in the community, is about you learning from others. Find a community that works for you. You may not like this community. You may need a community that may be a little softer. You got to find what community works for you. But once you start to follow community, you start to really find a group that hones your skills and abilities to where you'll be able to be the best person possible. So, anything else to add, Natalie, before we leave out? All right, guys. So have a super dope week on purpose. Remember that closed mouths don't get fed, and remember, the more you start to clean out the old, you'll be able to welcome the new. The more you start to see what these olds can be revitalized for, you'll be able to have a very profitable future and a happier life. So have a super dope week on purpose, guys. Share the link once it's over, and have a good week on purpose.